I had an experience with the Klan. They came to my house when I was little. But my mother, this is a strong woman, my mother, she went right to the door and opened it and gave them candy. And my mother used to tell me this thing, I don't even know if you remember, but you said this to me more than once. You said, son, sometimes you have to be a lion so you can be the lamb you really are.
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 Black men, women, and children were killed in violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but
racial terror permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been.
There are protests and vigils and prayers going up for a despicable, deplorable, detestable, loathsome white man. 21-year-old young black man was found lynched in his university campus.
So Dave Chappelle is once again speaking some hard truths, calling out the hypocrisy in the national reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination. We can all agree no one should be celebrating his death, but flying his body on Air Force Two, lowering flags to half-staff, having him lie in state, building a statue in the Capitol, and awarding him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, that's not a normal response for someone who never held office. Now compare that to the silence surrounding the young men recently found lynched in Mississippi. College student Trey and a homeless man, Cory Zucatis. Both were discovered hanging from trees. Both deaths raised serious questions, yet media coverage was practically non-existent. Police quickly claimed there was no foul play, but given Mississippi's history of lynching and today's political climate, this absolutely deserves deeper investigation. America's double standard about whose lives actually matter couldn't be clearer. The outrage over Charlie Kirk has been overwhelming. Politicians, celebrities, pundits, social media, you name it, everyone is weighing in. And get this, people are even being fired from their jobs just for posting that they didn't care about Kirk's death.
Yesterday at 5 p.m., I was fired from my job for posting a video saying I don't care about Charlie Kirk's death.
Meanwhile, the deaths of those two men in Mississippi barely registered. Chappelle is asking the question many of us are thinking. Why are people being punished for not mourning someone who was openly racist, while the actual lynchings of two black men are treated like background noise? So if you're tired of being gaslit into believing Charlie Kirk's death is the only thing that matters, stick around. In this video, we're breaking down how Mississippi is quietly trying to bring back lynchings, and why you need to pay attention to what the mainstream media isn't telling you.
What the 60s must have been like for anybody. What was it, 8 or 9 assassinations? What does that do to a generation? Having lived through that and having known those people. This is me. I imagine I'd still be angry.
Many people see what happened to Charlie as tragic, like any other loss of human life, but we can't ignore how America is sanitizing the legacy of a white supremacist in real time. Not only did Trump order U.S. flags flown at half-staff in his honor, but just one day after his death, Congresswoman Nancy Mace announced she would introduce a resolution to allow Charlie Kirk to lie in honor in the Capitol Rotunda. Mace wrote on X, "We will be introducing a resolution authorizing Charlie Kirk to lie in honor in the Capitol Rotunda, should the Kirk family wish for him to be honored there. Charlie Kirk devoted his life to defending our freedoms and our nation. He inspired millions, led countless souls to Christ, and never wavered in defense of the First Amendment. Such a legacy makes him uniquely worthy of this distinction." Now let's pause for a second and talk about how ridiculous this is. When it comes to private citizens lying in honor at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, only a handful of people have ever received that distinction, and only for extraordinary contributions to the nation or acts of true heroism. Among them is Rosa Parks. And now Republicans are seriously suggesting Charlie Kirk should be honored in the same way as Rosa Parks. This is a man who spent his career spreading white supremacist ideas, calling civil rights a mistake, and actively undermining marginalized communities.
Condemn the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as a huge mistake.
Correct.
This is gaslighting on a national scale. They're literally telling the public that someone who thrived on hate deserves to be remembered alongside heroes who risked everything for justice. And it gets even more outrageous. Charlie Kirk's casket was flown from Utah to Arizona on Air Force Two, personally escorted by J.D. Vance. If that wasn't strange enough, the military honor guard was ordered to carry his casket. Many people, including veterans, were outraged, calling it a disgrace and an insult to everyone who has served this country. One user on X wrote, "Black soldiers must look at that task with a bit of nausea." Charlie Kirk said he would prefer not to fly if the pilot was black. That's just a tiny sample of his hate. Another posted, "It's a shame the Air Force Honor Guard is carrying Charlie Kirk's casket. The Pentagon owes the American people an explanation. Charlie Kirk never served. He mocked veterans, spread hate, sowed division, and died doing it. This isn't honoring service. It's politicizing sacrifice. It's an insult to every fallen soldier." And again, let's remember who we're talking about. A man who openly said black people were better off before the Civil Rights Act, and that black women don't have the brainpower to be taken seriously without affirmative action.
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
Meanwhile, black folks who are just trying to mind their own business are suddenly being dragged into all this. They're being blamed, scapegoated, and even punished for supposedly celebrating Kirk's assassination. Take that student in Texas, for example. She was expelled after someone secretly recorded her making a joke about Kirk in a private conversation. People are losing jobs, getting harassed online, all because they refused to cry for a man who openly said civil rights was a mistake. Let that sink in. So now, not only do we have to watch this massive state-sponsored mourning parade for someone who fought against everyone who wasn't a straight white conservative male, but we're also being gaslit into believing we should care. That somehow, if we don't mourn the same way, we're the problem. And while this circus for Charlie Kirk dominates the headlines, let's talk about what's not being covered. Because while America was busy mourning a white supremacist, 2 young men were found hanging from trees in Mississippi. One of them, Demar Trey Reid, was a 21-year-old black college student at Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi. The other, Cory Zucatis, was a 36-year-old white homeless man in Vicksburg. Both deaths happened the same week as Kirk's assassination, and both have far too many suspicious details to just be written off.
Authorities say the body of 21-year-old Demar Trey Reid was found hanged from a tree by a faculty member near the pickleball courts. Word spread quickly throughout the Cleveland campus, leaving students and others concerned and worried.
Well, because I am a black student, hearing that happened to another black student, it really made me feel, it makes me feel unsafe.
I do have to walk to class, and I like to go walk on the track, and it would be happy to know like what happened.
Local and state investigators immediately started looking into the incident. DSU Police Chief Michael Peeler says investigators found no evidence.
Authorities were quick, too quick, to say there was no foul play in Trey Reid's case. But Trey's family isn't buying it. They're demanding an independent autopsy because the official story just doesn't add up.
And members of Reid's family are insisting on a thorough investigation.
Please do your research on this. Do not let them sweep nothing else under the rug. Enough is enough.
Cory Zucatis' case is also suspicious. Same method, same timing, yet no clear public information about the circumstances of his death. According to Yahoo, police confirmed they discovered a man hanging from a tree in a densely wooded area near the Ameristar Casino. The coroner identified the body as Cory Zucatis, with Warren County Coroner Doug L. Husky confirming the discovery. Husky said Zucatis was found on Monday, September 15th, around 10:30 a.m., but police released no further details. The timing raises serious questions, because Cory was found just hours before Trey Reid's body was discovered. 2 hangings in Mississippi in 2025, within hours of each other. At the same time, Charlie Kirk supporters are calling for civil war. Is that really just a coincidence? That's for you to decide. What we do know is that mainstream media has deliberately ignored the story of these two men in Mississippi, while flooding the airwaves with coverage of Charlie Kirk. Now, yes, Cory Zucatis was white, but he was also homeless. And that's important, because do you know who recently suggested homeless people should be executed by lethal injection? Fox News host Brian Kilmeade. That's right, Kilmeade went on national TV and said we should just start eliminating the homeless. And he said that just 2 days before Cory Zucatis' body was found.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this, we're not voting for the right people. In North Carolina, wake up.
When Brian Kilmeade says we should get rid of the homeless with lethal injection, he's talking about Americans, veterans, trauma survivors, the most vulnerable people in this country. He's literally calling for state-sanctioned execution instead of housing, healthcare, or compassion. And yet people get fired for joking about Charlie Kirk. That's the hypocrisy Dave Chappelle is calling out. The same kind he pointed to after the Capitol riots when he compared the backlash to what Colin Kaepernick faced. We are living in very dark times. On one hand, America is turning Charlie Kirk into a saint. On the other, 2 men are found hanging from trees in Mississippi. One, a young black student. And the whole thing barely registers on the national radar. When people say the system is broken, that's not quite right. The system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. There's psychological warfare being waged on us. Don't let the media, politicians, or so-called influencers gaslight you into thinking you're crazy for noticing this. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Why is Charlie Kirk's death treated like a national emergency, while Trey Reed and Cory Zucatis are erased before their stories are even told? Why is grief mandatory for someone who called civil rights a mistake, but non-existent when Black and poor people are being lynched in 2025? What does that say about where this country is headed? This conversation needs to happen, and it's not going to happen on News Nation, CNN, or Fox News.